Sophie Lionnet had a dream to work with children. In 2016, she moved to London to fulfill her dream. Her dream turned into a nightmare. Sophie was abused, tortured, and murdered by two evil monsters. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel where we talk about real crimes and real people. This is the story of Sophie Lionnet. Wanna know what happened? Let's get started. Sophie Lionnet was born on January 7, 1996 in Troyes, France. She was described by the people who knew her as quiet, shy, gentle, kind, selfless, generous, reserved, naive. She loved animals, playing the guitar, reading, and ice skating. Sophie hated suffering and injustice. She dreamt of working with children. After school, Sophie completed a vocational course in childcare. She was then offered a position as an au pair in London. For Sophie, this was a new adventure, one where she could fulfill her dream of working with children as a first job. And also she could improve her English skills. So to London she went, and she never returned alive. In January 2016, at the age of 20 years old, Sophie moved in with a couple named Sabrina and Ouissem on Wimbledon Park Road in Southfield, southwest London, borough of Wandsworth. A friend of Sabrina's brother recommended Sophie for the job. She was paid only £50 a week. In the beginning, the children adored her. She befriended other nannies. Sophie seemed happy and she got along with Sabrina, but things would change. Sabrina started calling Sophie lazy, and despite Sabrina's promises of things getting better, it never did. It was quite the opposite. Sabrina became Sophie's nemesis. Sabrina was born in Algeria in 1983. Her real name is Nafisa. She had 3 siblings. Her parents and sister left for Paris shortly after she was born. Sabrina was cared for by her grandmother. At the age of 8, she left for France. It was hard for her to settle in. At the age of 18, she left school. Sabrina was working a crepe stand at a fun fair when she met Ouissem. Ouissem was completely besotted by Sabrina's looks and charm. He pursued her and did everything to get her attention, and she agreed to date him. Sabrina was the dominant one in the troubled relationship. She was manipulative, disloyal, and a cheater. She often left Ouissem for other men, but always came back to him. In 2005, Sabrina moved to London and changed her name from Nafisa to Sabrina to reinvent herself. She moved so she could find work and improve her English. Ouissem followed her along. He started working at Société Générale, a French bank. Sabrina worked as a fashion designer and a makeup artist. The two split when Ouissem suspected she had been cheating on him with a man whom she allegedly had a child with. In 2011, there was a new man in Sabrina's life, Mark Walton. Mark Walton was a founding member of an Irish boy band called Boyzone, along with Shane Lynch. They founded the band while still at school. Eventually he got pushed out from the band by members, but that didn't stop him becoming extremely successful in the industry. Mark had a perfect combination. He was good looking and wealthy. The pair lived together for 2 years. Then Sabrina disappeared without warning. She gave birth to her second child in America. Mid-2013, Sabrina returned to the UK. Initially, Sabrina convinced Mark to keep banking her lifestyle, including paying rent for the flat Sabrina and Ouissem killed Sophie. In 2014, Mark stopped giving her money, and Sabrina didn't take that too well. Sabrina became obsessed with Mark and did everything she could to hurt him. She wanted revenge. She called Mark's mother and told her he was an abuser, and she also posted it on Facebook. She filed several complaints against him to the police, and all of them were dismissed. Her obsession with Mark Walton took over her. Sabrina's life was falling apart. Money was short, and guess who came back at the scene? Ouissem. He gave Sabrina money, but they still struggled, and at the same time, they wanted a lifestyle of the rich. Sabrina and Ouissem lived in a wealthy middle-class suburban neighborhood, raising Sabrina's 2 children. Neighbors called the couple antisocial, odd, and not friendly. They were inconsiderate. They usually left their garbage outside of their home for days. They blocked the neighbors' driveways with their cars, and they didn't pay rent on time. Sabrina was described as very glamorous and well-dressed. Sophie arrived in London. She moved in with the couple, and things were good in the beginning. A few months later, Sabrina started her delusional behavior. She believed Sophie and Mark Walton were planning to hurt her and her family. Sabrina accused Sophie of being a spy. She believed Sophie was sleeping with Mark, and that Sophie was an abuser, and that she was helping Mark come into her home so he could drug her and assault her and her family. Sabrina accused Sophie of stealing a diamond pendant and conspiring against her. In the beginning of the abuse, Ouissem would leave the house, but then he started participating as well. Sabrina and Ouissem made accusations against Sophie so they could manipulate her and control her. The abuse escalated. Sabrina did everything she could to force a confession out of Sophie. The couple took her identity card, her phone. They stopped paying her to isolate her and to make her confess. Sabrina started beating Sophie with an electric cord. They starved Sophie. They threatened Sophie with assault, violence, and prison. The abuse lasted months. Witnesses saw Sabrina shout, call Sophie names, hitting her. The police and Sophie's parents got involved, but no one did anything. Every time Sophie threatened to leave, Sabrina would convince her to stay, promising things would change. Sophie's mother asked Sophie to return, but Sabrina refused to release Sophie until she uncovered the truth about Sophie and Mark. Sabrina and Ouissem interrogated Sophie. They physically assaulted her. They threatened her. Sophie tried to satisfy with false confessions and apologies. She gave them confusing answers which made them more angry. In April 2017, Sophie told her mother she wanted to go home. The couple didn't allow her to leave the apartment. August 2017, Sophie called her mother crying, disoriented. Sabrina and Ouissem forced Sophie to sleep on a desk. They interrogated Sophie and recorded all the interrogations. September 17, 2017, after a long interrogation and torture, Sophie confessed to drugging Ouissem so Mark could assault him. A few hours later, Sophie was dead. Her body was kept in a suitcase in a shed for 2 days. Eventually, Ouissem burned Sophie's body in the backyard and did a barbecue to conceal the smell. Sabrina and Ouissem planned to get rid of Sophie's written apologies, confessions, and pleas. Their plan was altered. When the fire department arrived, they found burned human remains. Sophie's body was severely burned. Autopsy couldn't determine cause of death. Autopsy results showed Sophie had been beaten in the days leading to her death. Sabrina and Ouissem were arrested and charged with the murder and torture of Sophie Lionnet. The toxic and evil couple, once a team, blamed each other during trial in March 2018. The two admitted to trying to dispose of the body. They planned to tell a story that Sophie had left the job and returned to France. Sabrina tried to implicate Mark Walton. According to Sabrina, Ouissem tortured Sophie in the bathtub and demanded sex from her while she was lying lifeless. She stated he submerged her head underwater. He put a towel soaked in water in her mouth. Ouissem stated Sabrina had threatened his father with a knife, overdosed on pills, jumped out of a window, and she was admitted to a psychiatric hospital and diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Sabrina was diagnosed with depression and borderline personality disorder. She manipulated Ouissem into her fantasy, and he believed Sabrina's accusation. He participated willingly into the torture and death of Sophie Lionnet. Mark Walton testified and talked about Sabrina's volatile and unpredictable behavior, and he had never heard of Sophie Lionnet. Ouissem stated Sophie died by accident, and Sabrina said Sophie had died in her sleep. Sabrina and Ouissem stated they were going to the police with the tapes as a proof against Mark Walton. The court believed it was actually to blackmail him. Ouissem and Sabrina were found guilty of murder. They were sentenced to life in prison with a minimum sentence of 30 years. Sophie Lionnet was just 21 years old when she died.